The Legend ZA DLC is out now and playable on Showdown. And while I'm excited for a lot of these new megas coming out, I think that one of the easiest to make work in this metagame is Mega Golisopod. Golisopod is a great Pokemon that's held back by its ability, and there's many such cases, but Golisopod with a Mega presumably will ditch that emergency exit and will actually have a reasonable ability. Now, in this metagame, they've given these Pokemon fake abilities because we don't actually know what their abilities are, but they've given Golisopod Regenerator in order to keep up with the theme that Golisopod wants to switch out, which makes a lot of sense to me. Now, that does tend to make Golisopod better suited to teams that feature regen spam and VoltTurn, and that's what we've got here. We've got Golisopod with U-turn, we've got Staraptor with U-turn, we've got U-turn on Grafaiai. Now, this could have been Parting Shot as well, but I was more worried about things like Mega Absol, and so I wanted to be able to U-turn out in case they tried to come in on the Pranskter moves. But I do think, after playing through this, that could have definitely been Parting Shot. We've got Chilly Reception on the Slowking, we've got Volt Switch on the Rotom. That also could be Parting Shot, but as you'll see, that's my only electric move, so you gotta have an electric move, so Volt Switch is better than Parting Shot in that instance. So we've got 5 guys who can pivot, and then a random Crocodile. Now let's just go through this battle. This first game is not going to be too interesting because my opponent does not really have a very serious team. Golisopod, we just want to get the Mega off right away. I could have led off with Grafaiai, maybe I should have. Now Staraptor has an interesting role on this team. Of course, there's Mega Staraptor, and so you might think that this would be the Mega. Seeing Golisopod on the team says, hey, no, there's not. There's going to be Golisopod that's the Mega. But Staraptor, Mega Staraptor doesn't really have too strong of an upside. And normal Staraptor actually has a decent speed tier with the Choice Scarf. So you're able to outspeed all those really fast guys like Mega Garchomp and Mega Raichu or whatever, right? Here we trap the Espeon, which is really nice. And having Pursuit is the reason why Crocodile is on this team. Now you can see here that Lucario, I can Brave Bird it technically, but it also has Vacuum Wave, so we can't necessarily beat this particular Pokemon with Staraptor. But something like Mega Absol, you can absolutely beat with Staraptor because it doesn't care about Shadow Sneak, right? And Garchomp doesn't have any priority, and Zeraora doesn't have any priority. Now this particular Staraptor does not have Double Edge. I sort of regret that. I think maybe it should have. That's an insane stand on the Scissor's part. I don't know what my opponent is thinking, but now we'll take that, keep that in the back of our head, and that'll come back to play here in a bit. Having regen is so nice on Golisopod. It's max Fizz Def, but it still takes hits from weaker Pokemon like Heliolisk, and we can take the Rocky Helmets, we don't care. Here, they've shown in the past they do not care, so we'll just kill this with the Overheat. Going back to what I was saying, the Staraptor, I think I was worried more about things like Golden Go, and so I gave it knockoff. You can also run Blaze Kick. I think that is a pretty strong option, especially with opposing Golisopod. And Blaze Kick is technically stronger once a Pokemon is knocked off. So, not a bad option overall. Dondozo literally can't do anything with Slowking on the field because I have Psy Noise, so it can't even rest off. But the Staraptor, in theory, is really good to do a lot of breaking, but in practice it doesn't really hit that hard unless it's Choice Band, and this is Choice Scarf specifically, so it can outrun things that aren't paying attention, and you'll see that happen a couple of times. I'm only going to show some replays because I like to show my wins, but in other games that I had, you could definitely see that Staraptor was having a hard time breaking stuff, especially Rotom Washes, which is why I think Double Edge over Knockoff would have made a lot of sense. I never did end up adding that, but you can if you want. Here, you see Pain Split come into play against the Annihilate. If I had Parabolic Charge here, I would be boosting the Annihilate up, and I wouldn't be able to recover. So this is the first instance where I want to show off that Pain Split on Rotom is actually superior to Parabolic Charge in some instances. I'm not going to say Parabolic Charge isn't a good move on Rotom, because I think it is, and I really like Parabolic Charge as a move. It's one of my favorite moves, although maybe not the top 10. But it's on Heliolisk, and I love Heliolisk as a Pokemon. I'm glad to see it getting more distribution. Grafaiai, let's talk about Grafaiai now. We see that it taunts Glim on lead, but then it also gets Earth powered. If I had had Parting Shot there, I could have gone for it, and so that would be another example where Parting Shot would be better on it. Unfortunately, because of how the turns on Taunt work, Glimmora is still able to get up Stealth Rock even after I taunted it. So that I would call overall a failure on Grafaiai's part to really affect the battle in any meaningful way. So that is unfortunate. Here I was hoping that this would kill Mega Garchomp, because it does have lower defenses, but it was not enough, unfortunately. But we do get off a good chunk, and actually because they go for Draco Meteor there, I'm able to go in and Pursuit Trap it with a Crocodile. So even though I do lose my Staraptor, trading that for a Mega Garchomp is pretty good. Now they're going to go into Dragonite, and this is going to be sort of an awkward exchange for both of us. They're banking on me not having Stone Edge, which I don't, so that's fine. I can knock off banking on them not having Roost, which they don't, so that's fine. Here we're going to sack the Grafaiai so I can get an Intimidate off. I'll live another Fire Punch, so now if they want to get the KO and not die themselves, they have to go for Outrage, which allows me to go into Golisopod and get my Mega off. Here we go for Fimp because it was my strongest move at this time. At this point I still had Aqua Jet on my Golisopod to pick off something like maybe like a Delphox or something. But first of all, we're not seeing any of those on the ladder, and second of all, having Iron Head is just super useful. See, this team sort of struggled before breaking Clefable, and so I did not have Iron Head at this time, but in later battles I will, which will really help. Rotom-Heat showing its worth here against the Genesect and the Annihilate and the Magearna. So many teams on the ladder have these three guys, right? I can burn the Annihilate, which of course, well, yeah, Final Gambit. Final Gambit was the only way that they were going to be able to beat Golisopod. This is a max HP, max defense one. And I could have just always come in, U-turn out, go into Staraptor, right? Now, because the U-turns weren't doing very much damage to my Slowking before, it was pretty obvious that that was the set. But, you know. Here's another example where Pain Split absolutely is better than Parabolic Charge. Parabolic Charge, let me tell you, that would not be doing enough damage, especially with this Magearna's Assault Vest. I'm not sure it was, but I think it might have been. And if it was Assault Vest, then Parabolic Charge wasn't going to heal. But we got it in range of the Overheat, even if it was Assault Vest, using Pain Split, not dying to those Focus Blasts. Yeah, okay, so the Annihilate went for U-turn. It wasn't doing too much damage to the Slowking. Pretty sure, you know, it's that max HP Final Gambit set. That was the only way it was going to hit the Golisopod. But Rotom was able to beat all three of those guys. And they're all on so many teams right now. So that's very nice. And it's the reason why Rotom is on this team. Right? Rotom beats a lot of the guys, and specifically Genesect, Magearna. These two guys get beat 1v1 by Rotom-Heat. Rotom Wash, which is also very common in this tier, does not beat these two. And so that's why we're running Rotom-Heat. Now here we get up a lot more value by getting up, oh, I want to slow this down actually. Here we get way more value out of my Grafaiai because we, instead of going for, well, Taunt here is good because they can't Rage Fist me. I'm a normal type, and the Drain Punch isn't going to do anything. So I can stop them from going for Bulk Up or Stealth Rock, and then I get up Toxic Spike in the following turn. So now that Toxic Spike, as you can see, may not affect my opponent too much because they have two Steel types and a Flying type. But if the Keldeo comes out, it's going to get poisoned. And if the Bax Caliber is not Boots, which this one isn't, then it also gets poisoned. It's probably not Mega Bax Caliber, but given the rest of their options, it was either that or the Dragonite. I don't really like Mega Bax Caliber, but that's what they wanted to run. At this point, again, I still do not have Iron Head, otherwise Iron Head there would have blown this clean sideways. Now here we U-turn out though, and we get our Regenerator back and get better positioning against a lot of the other guys. So, as you can see, the only guy we've lost so far is Grafaiai, whose whole job is to be an anti-lead. with also having toxic spikes. So it's an anti-lead lead, right? This is really nice. Here they try to set up in front of Slowking, but I do have Ice Beam. It's not specifically for this guy, but it definitely helps. And here, if they'd predicted and gone for Fire Punch, that could have been a thing, but they did not. And so we're able to pick it off with a Fimp. Genesect comes out. Once again, I am not at all scared of the Genesect. If they're physical, does not matter. If they're special, it does not matter. Now, if this were almost any ability and this were Tinted Lens, that would be a major problem. But this is not almost any ability. They do not have Tinted Lens. So Extreme Speed would have been their strongest play there, but they didn't go for it. And then the Keldeo is blocked by the Slowking. The Slowking is really nice into Keldeo, plus the Lucario Z that we saw earlier. It just completely blanks them. Technically, Lucario Z could have Dark Pulse, but it doesn't have Mega Launcher currently. And that's by design, because they don't want him to be so broken that he has to get banned. And so without Mega Launcher, then they're not running Dark Pulse. And so Slowking is actually very safe into that guy. Now here I'm making this series of plays just because I'm expecting them to, come on, go your Magearna, because I have Psychic move, right? But they do not respect the Psychic move. But eventually I would have just chillied here into the Staraptor, and it would have been fine. The Magearna, I was sort of scared of it, but I didn't need to be because Rotom was still relatively healthy. It would have just been really annoying if they'd have just bolt switched on the Rotom switch in, and then go back to Keldeo, then I have to draw it out. But like at least one of these times, come on, man, just predict my dang Psychic move. But they did not care at all about that. So, but then they forfeit, so it's okay. Now we're playing off against a team with some weird synergy stuff. They do have Scovillain plus Sticky Web, which makes a lot of sense, because you don't have any Sun users in this tier that aren't Megas themselves. So if you wanted to try out Mega Scovillain, you would have to not have any Sun. And of course, Scovillain doesn't get Sun anyway. Or doesn't use Sun anyway because it's not Chlorophyll. Can we pursue the Excadrill because I really like getting that 50% off that you can get with Crocodile. And I just want to limit their turns. I think I should have U-turned instead of going for Toxic Spikes on the first time, because then I would have kept up momentum against the Excadrill. But they were able to spin off my first round of Toxic Spikes. Here, this is a bit of a panic play, not gonna lie, because I know that my team is really weak to Rotom Wash. Rotom Wash, I still like Rotom-Heat better, but Rotom Wash is undeniably good. And this Nasty Plot set is pretty scary. If you're running Nasty Plot, that is where Parabolic Charge is better. Here, the Slurpuff is going to finally be able to get up a Sticky Web. That's actually one of the things that I want to talk about here. We've seen the Grafaiai does pretty well as an anti-lead into things like Annihilate, and it was able to deny the Slurpuff, but then at the end of the day, the Slurpuff was still able to get up its Weds because it can just switch, right? It's not like you can't switch into Grafaiai. So it's not an end-all be-all in terms of keeping Hazard off the field. And this team has no Hazard control, because I'm relying on Grafaiai. So I'm not sold on that. Here, I get Fire Punched for my arrogance for sitting in front of a Dragonite. That's fair enough. Now, here I'm going to get a Freeze into the Excadrill. That does not matter at all. Like, my opponent will complain about it, but it doesn't matter because I have the Scarf Staraptor. Here, Rotom, in theory, should beat the Scovillain, right? But then they get the crit. Then you get a special attack raise because they're running Contrary in this metagame. And then I get an Overheat miss. So I don't want to hear about any freeze, which did not matter because you weren't beating my Slowking anyway. Because you beat my Rotom 1v1 via double hacks. But like I said, that doesn't matter anyway either, because I have this Scarf Gravebird, which one-shots all the rest of your guys. They're not banned at extreme speed, so I don't think that would have killed anyway. And so we're able to pick up the KO there. This team is sort of a meme team because it's Trick Room, but then they have a normal Marowak and an Avala Gasui. But like, don't sleep on those guys. Alolan Marowak is a Trick Room staple because it's super strong, right? And it's not like Marowak normal is weak, so it's the same guy, right? It's still got Thick Club. So it's actually pretty strong, but it obviously could be better. Here's another example of Grafaiai really failing the team. It's not able to beat Porygon 1v1, and so its taunt only delays the inevitable. Here, I know that they could teleport, but in case they don't do it for whatever reason, just gonna throw off another Will-O-Wisp. Not like anything I do really would have changed stuff there. And I want the Intimidate off on the Marowak, see what they're gonna go for. Here, a knockoff, and that's actually bad for my opponent because they just lost half their power. They are able to still KO me with Earthquake because, like I said, hey, Marowak is super strong. By this point, I had Iron Head, and we do get the flinch, which is lucky. But that didn't really matter because Golisopod is super strong. And I'm able to actually U-turn here because they're in range of U-turn. So now I can go for close combat. That'll deal with the Suinavalug, it'll deal with the Heatran, and of course it deals with them if they stay in. I don't want to sack this though because it is good in a lot of these guys, so I'm just going to let Indeedee get his Trick Room up. Here we're going to Chili out. We don't let the Hoopa come in. I can go Golisopod here because they're not going to appreciate a U-turn, and U-turn we shall go for. They might have been Flame Body before, but now they're Mega, so they can't burn me. Here, unfortunately, I am going to have to switch in on Eruption. And here I make a misplay. I should have gone back into Slowking, but instead I thought I would have lived that for some reason, even though clearly they just showed the 38, so that's definitely a roll. So I should have switched out back into Slowking, but whatever. They sacked the Marowak, which I don't think they should have done. I think they should have always gone in Indeedee, but that's just me. Here, I am slower than their Hoopa, and so we can just trigger him out into my Slowking again. And at this point, I know that I'm going to be able to Scald, and then Indeedee can't really touch me. The reason I think they should have gone Indeedee before, instead of sacking the Marowak, is because if... Actually, I don't think this Indeedee gets Healing Wish. So if it doesn't get Healing Wish, then I don't know what they would have done. So maybe that was their play. I'm not sure. Maybe the better play is to run Indeedee female then, so you have a Healing Wish. Most Trick Room teams usually do. Now this is a scary team. They got Cyclizar, and I'm not sure what to expect from Cyclizar. Here I actually make a very bad play, but I get rewarded for it because they go for Overheat. I was not expecting the Overheat. Maybe I should have expected the Overheat. The beginning of this game is actually pretty badly played on my part. There we go for U-turn. A Parting Shot, of course, would have been nice there, but we already explained my reasoning for having the U-turn. I think you should, if you're going to use this team, switch out for Parting Shot, though, after testing. Here we go for Brave Bird. I'm just trying to get rid of the Garchomp, and here they go into Rotom Wash. If I had had a Double Edge here, then that would have done more damage to the Rotom. Unfortunately, I do not. And as we've seen previously, we don't really have a great switching into Rotom Wash because my Spit-F guys are both weak to electric and they're weak to water, right? I'm willing to get burned here just because I know that my main job here is just regen bot. And so getting burned is not the end of the world if I can somehow beat this Rotom. So now we're going to go for a knockoff, right? We want to try to get rid of that thing's leftovers because it's really annoying. But they do make a good switch into their Darkrai. Here I'm not really sure why they decided to stay regular. I don't think that benefited them in any way. Here they finally decide to Mega. They go for knockoff, which doesn't really do anything. Because I'm burned, that doesn't do too much, but that's okay, because that was my intention to let it get burned. There, I forgot about Sucker Punch, so that's entirely on me. I don't know if that crit mattered. Crocodile is pretty strong. I finally get my knockoff off that I wanted to, and that'll be really important later on in the game. Because now this Rotom doesn't have any recovery. So I can Volt Switch. I mean, nice Parabolic Charge, but it's not the same. And then I go and sack the Golisopod because it's burned. And it's not really doing anything. And as we can see now, I outspeed their Rotom. I do have some speed. Here it's obvious I'm going to go for Volt Switch, so I don't want the Garchomp coming in. So that's why we went for Overheat there. Unfortunately, they're able to KO. We know that this had Overheat, so it's obviously special Cyclizar. Fortunately, they don't have knockoff. If they had knockoff, it would have made this game a lot more annoying. But if you look at their team now, they have Clefable, and Clefable could be unaware, it could be Magic Guard, we're not sure at this point in the game. They have Rotom at 17%. They have Melmetal. Rotom dies to my Volt Switch, and the Melmetal cannot beat my Rotom-Heat. Another guy that is beat 1v1 by Rotom-Heat. So that's really showing its worth. Rotom also beats this particular Clefable set with Pain Split. So this is the game I really want to break down why Rotom-Heat is so good in this metagame. As we've seen in this battle, I've played pretty poorly. Right? I let my Golisopod get burned. I wasted my Staraptor's HP for basically nothing. I did not get any value out of my Staraptor. I let my Grafaiai get paralyzed. That doesn't really matter. Especially because at this point in the game, I still did not have Gunk Shot on my Grafaiai. I ended up putting on Gunk Shot after this battle specifically because I had Foul Play before because I'm just a max HP lead Grafaiai and I didn't think Gunk Shot was going to do too much. But Clefable was so annoying for this team that I decided, okay, we have Iron Head on Golisopod, we also need Gunk Shot Grafaiai, and so that was a change I made after this battle. But I did not have it at this point in time. As you can see though, having Pain Split means I don't have to worry about Parabolic Charge running out or anything. Pain Split has a lot of PP, and we will put on Hyper Fast now. Because all we're doing now is we're just wasting PP of each other, right? I'm just going to pivot out. Rotom is never going to get low because they have to keep their Clefable healthy, otherwise they lose. And if they keep their Clefable healthy, then that's just a blood bag for my Rotom. I can just suck all the life health off of it with a little bit of Pain Split. I throw off Will-O-Wisps as well, which have a lot of PP, so that they can't go Melmetal. Going Rotom would also be foolish, and even Cyclizar doesn't necessarily want to get burned. I can troll around, go into Slowking. I can go into my Grafaiai if I'm feeling really cheeky, because Grafaiai doesn't really matter. And my opponent is actually just going to get beat 1v1 by the combination of Slowking and my Rotom-Heat. They have Superpower on Melmetal, doesn't matter. They have Double Iron Bash and Thunder Punch on Melmetal, it does not matter. They cannot break Rotom-Heat. So they lost their Rotom. Here we're going to make a couple of good plays by predicting their Cyclizar with Ice Beam, but as is the case with a lot of these stally matchups with Regenerator, they're able to get back their health just by safely getting in their Cyclizar. And so even if I predict them once or twice, as long as they're at high enough HP, it doesn't really matter. But as you can see, we're over 100 turns now. This is call this SPL finals. That's just how these things go sometimes. I just have to wait for my opponent to make a misplay or until they run out of PP, because I literally cannot be touched. They don't have a knockoff on their Cyclizar, and if they had knockoff on their Cyclizar, my Rotom-Heat would have been whittled down by Stealth Rock. My Slowking would have been whittled down by Stealth Rock, even though it is Regenerator. But they didn't have knockoff, and so that saves me a lot of pain and suffering here. So we can see 152, turn 152. They're still trying to do their thing, but finally Cyclizar goes down, and at this point, the game is over because they can't do anything. I believe they try some last-minute ineffectual stuff, like they're trying to predict, oh, I'm going to predict you, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to keep switching, because the Melmetal literally can't do anything. And then finally they let their Melmetal get burned, and once the Melmetal gets burned, they finally decide to concede defeat instead of struggle to death. So that all could have been prevented if I had played the early game better, but in this end game against really strong hitters, I was still able to pull it out. Now Clefable, before I put Gunk Shot on, before I put Iron Head on, I lost to a Cosmic Power Clefable. That kind of thing is one of those things you run into every once in a while. That's obviously a problem. But now that I have these moves, it should be less of an issue. And really, Clefable shouldn't be beating this team at all. Okay, now in this game, we'll see why Scarf Staraptor is sort of nice if your opponent is not very good. And this guy, he had almost 1,400 points, so I don't know why he was playing like this. Turn 1 Volt Switch because I know they're going to Mega. What kind of Raichu stays in and doesn't Mega? Here we can just go for Close Combat because they are just barely in range of Scarf Close Combat. If they had seen me go into Staraptor, a good player there would have said, why do they go Staraptor? And they would have said, because the choice Scarfed, and then they would have switched. They're not that good of a player, despite having, middle of the ladder points. Golisopod is such a bulky guy, it does not care about Terrakion at all. Maybe if the Terrakion was +2 and it got a Stone Edge crit, maybe it would care at that point, but up until that point, we do not care. Here's another example of my opponent not really being very smart. They should have gone Clefable here, or maybe Corviknight. Either of those would have been acceptable. Instead, they just stay in with Slowking. I think maybe they were Shuka or something. I have no clue. But I'm always going to go for knockoff there, because if they go Clefable or Corviknight, I want progress of some sort, and to knockoff is a superior play there. Here, Golisopod is just going to U-turn out, because if they go for close combat again, they'll die, because they'll be -2. If they go Corviknight, I'll take the Rocky Helmet, but I got the Regenerator. I'm just going to regen that back. And I got a Rotom, and they have no Electric Immunity. Raichu is not an Electric Immunity on this team, because it's got a Mega, right? So I don't know why they don't have an Electric Immunity on their team, but whatever. At this point, I do have Iron Head, but my opponent doesn't respect it. You know, I think that some kind of speedy Clefable with Life Orb Flamethrower could be really cute to try to beat Golisopod. Because as you saw there, I stayed in with impunity. But if you caught me off guard with a Flamethrower, that would have been really cool. Here you can see the extreme speed. It's like the only way you can do damage to Rotom-Heat. So you do have to watch out for that. But if I had decided to go for Overheat there instead of Volt switching out, then they would have been dead. And they would have lost me 1v1. And as you can see here, all I gotta do, Pain Split back on the Clefable coming in. And now once again, I'm healthy. And if I'd had Parabolic Charge into Spit F Clef, I was not getting the health back. Now at this point, as I said previously, I put Gunk Shot on my Grafaiai because I'm sick and tired of dealing with those Clefable. And so at that point, we're good. Still have U-turn, so we can't Parting Shot out. I still probably shouldn't risk it anyway. As we saw from the extreme speed damage to my Rotom, that's probably like Bandit or something. So I go into my Golisopod, figuring that they don't have Flamethrower. Here, we just wanted to Intimidate off, because now I can go into Golisopod, and I can chew this close combat. Once again, I can just go for U-turn safely, because they're going to put themselves at -2, and now they are in range of U-turn. And so now Rotom-Heat beats both the guys in the back, right? We've seen this Genesect is really strong, but it is not. I'm not in range of it, and I can just Overheat and then Volt switch out. And then we got one final game here. My opponent has a lead Kleavor, which obviously Grafaiai cannot taunt that. I love Kleavor, it's such a cool Pokemon. So glad to see it back. Here we know they're going for Stone Axe. If I'd have been smart here, I might have pursued it, but we are just going to knock off, try to get some progress. But I figured they wouldn't stay in at the very least because of X-Scissor. But I could, like an X-Scissor, because I could have Earthquake, right? They don't want to die. Here, this is a bad play on my part. I want to talk about why I made this play. So here, I go into Rotom-Heat on the Clefable because that's my answer to it. I'm going to Keldeo. Bad position. What Pokemon on my team beats Keldeo? Well, it's obviously Slowking. But my opponent should know that, right? It's such an obvious tight disadvantage for Keldeo. So to me, in my mind, what you would do here is you would Flip Turn. Now, that's not a bad assumption, but it's a dangerous assumption, given that Keldeo doesn't have to have Flip Turn. Hydro Pump / Surf / Scald plus Secret Sword plus Vacuum Wave plus Ice Beam plus Earth Power means that Flip Turn is actually probably not on most Keldeo. So he doesn't have to Flip Turn. And if he double switches out, then good on him. But what I should do always is go into Slowking. But what I don't want to do is get caught in the Vortex. And I maybe want to get my Mega Evolution off. So I go into my Golisopod, Stealth Rocker up, so I am going to take that 25%. And they Scald me. Fortunately, I don't get burned, but I do get emergency exited out, which means that when I come in next time, I'm going to have to take another 25%, and then I'm going to have to Mega to get my regen. That's actually probably the biggest weakness of Golisopod that I've noticed so far. Besides its, crippling 4x fire weakness or whatever. The fact that it has to come in, take Stealth Rock, or it can even get the regen. If you screw up like once like that, get that emergency exit, you are so far behind, it's going to be really hard for you to come back from that. And so actually, I think the regen should be on Mega Golisopod when it comes to the main game. Because otherwise, it might be in a bit of a pickle. Like, yeah, it's good typing and all that, but I don't know, man. The fact that I came in, got emergency exited out, and I can't have boots is pretty gnarly. Here, once again, Rotom is my preferred Genesect switch-in. They crit me there, which is a bit annoying, but it isn't the end of the world, because here, if I had gone for Pain Split, they were obviously going to go Clefable there. I do go for Will-O-Wisp in case they go for something else like Cleaver or whatever. But I wasn't going to be able to get any HP back. And so my Rotom-Heat is basically dead. Because all the other guys on their team are faster. Here I see, okay, they're going to go for knockoff. They probably don't have Blaze Kick, but I want to Scout here. So we Scout here, they have Volt Switch. So showing Volt Switch tells me they don't have Blaze Kick on their Zeraora, so I should be safe then to stay in with my Golisopod. Here, like I said, my Rotom is basically dead, so we're just going to sack it. So go to Zeraora. Now I can go to Golisopod safely because I know they don't have Blaze Kick. They're probably going to Volt Switch out, and so I'm going to U-turn out. Obviously, if they stayed in, it also would have done a decent chunk because it's not like they're fighting type or anything, right? At this point, Braybird is extremely free into their team. They could go into the Excadrill, but, you know, I do have close combat, and you do have to respect that, so they're not going to go hard. Here I have the Intimidate, and so they go for Rapid Spin, which is weird, I think, because I don't know, like, I guess because I was in range of I think maybe what was Adamant Excadrill. Here, that was lucky. Crit Burn is lucky. I'm not going to deny that. But I did have Golisopod still to come out after the fact, and they already had, you know, given themselves quite a lot of chip. Yeah, that was sort of a frustration staying, but like, what were they going to go into Keldeo and then get walled by Slowking? Here, I don't really need Grafaiai, so I'm just going to do this so the Excadrill can't go for Sword Stance. Right? I'm basically sacking this guy. But if they're going to play like that, then I'm going to go into Golisopod. Now, if I had Aqua Jet or kept Liquidation or something on this, that could have been cool. But as you're going to see, not having a water move doesn't really matter here because I can just Leech Life back. Leech Life, and now I'm going to still live Earthquake because we've seen I don't take... I'll take +2 because of the health I got back. But I do want to keep my HP on this guy. I'm going to sack Grafaiai here. And then I'm going to come back in, and now I have First Impression as we go for it here, and they die. So at this point, I have the Slowking specifically for the Keldeo. They make a great double there, but like, I still live U-turn there, and I can just go into Golisopod, or I can switch back into Slowking, which is what I'm going to do here. Now, once again, I'm in this weird position where I expect the Keldeo to respect the Psychic move, and so I'm going to chill you out again, once again, expecting them to respect my guy, but they don't. So here I go into Golisopod. I should have probably switched out again, so that was a misplay on my part. But really what I'm waiting for is Staraptor to clean up. So here we Psychic Noise. It does not one-shot, but it does two-shot. It's pretty healthy. I go Golisopod here. I'm not really sure if that was a good play. I'm pretty sure it was not a good play because they could have had extreme speed, I guess, on this guy. But I don't think they have extreme speed on this because they would have shown it by this point, I think. But U-turn picks up the KO on Slowking, which we don't need anymore. And like I said, I think if they had extreme speed, we would have seen it into things like the Rotom or whatever. So Staraptor was able to clean up because my opponent didn't have extreme speed there. I probably misplayed a little bit that end there. I think I should have just stayed in, gone for Psychic Noise. You could have gotten rid of the Ice Beam on this Slowking set, put on Slack Off, and then it would have been a lot safer, all things considered. But as we saw earlier, the Ice Beam is sort of nice into things like the Dragonite setting up on you, and so I don't necessarily hate that option as well. But yeah, I think Staraptor, probably not the greatest mon, but I was thinking that there would be a lot more offensive fast guys. And as we see, you know, there is Keldeo, there is Genesect, there are, you know, things like Garchomp and Raichu running around that you do want to be able to outspeed and KO. Unfortunately, Vacuum Wave has been distributed to a lot more guys, which I really like the move Vacuum Wave. I think it's a really fun move, but because it's been distributed to things like Keldeo, Staraptor's speed with Scarf is not as commanding as you might think it would be otherwise. I do think it sort of fits into this U-turn spam, but you could also imagine this being another bulky guy, or maybe even a Genesect of my own, right? Scarf Genesect is running around, and obviously with extreme speed and Iron Head and Flamethrower, whatever I wanted to put on it, that would be a really good option as well. Maybe even Blaze Kick for Magearna. Not that I need it because I have the Rotom. But yeah, I think the Grafaiai and the Staraptor, those were the 2 experiments on this team. They didn't really pan out as well as I was hoping, but the Rotom and the Slowking are very much, obviously, a fantastic defensive core. And then Crocodile's still okay. This is God Pursuit. So that'll be it for today's video, and I'll catch you guys next time.